I was already smiling when I started packing my bags. Rome. That was the word echoing in my head. A place I never thought I would see. Old streets, big churches, history everywhere. And the idea that my own daughter-in-law had planned all of it for me made my heart feel warm. At my age, surprises are rare. Kind ones are even rarer. But as I folded my clothes, something felt wrong. Not loud wrong, not obvious wrong. Just a quiet feeling in my chest that kept saying, slow down. My daughter-in-law kept smiling, but she also kept asking questions. Too many questions. About when I would leave, about how long I would stay, about my papers. Then, just as I zipped my suitcase, the door opened. Our maid stepped inside. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. And before I could even speak, she grabbed my shoulder and whispered words that changed everything. Sir, please don't go. Just trust me. That moment froze time. She didn't explain. She didn't shout. She just looked scared, truly scared, and then walked away like nothing had happened. That was when my excitement turned into fear. I didn't know what was waiting for me in Rome. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. But I knew one thing for sure. If I ignored that warning, I might never come back the same. So I made a decision that would reveal a truth I was never meant to see. I still remember the moment my daughter-in-law smiled at me and said, pack your bags. You're going to Rome. At first I laughed. I thought she was joking. Rome was a place I only saw on TV. Old buildings, long roads, and stories from the past. I was an old man. Trips like that did not happen to people like me anymore. But she was serious. She held out the plane ticket and showed me the hotel booking on her phone. Everything was paid for. Flights, room, food, even tours. She said I had worked hard all my life and deserved a break. Everyone in the house seemed excited. My son nodded and said it was a good idea. The maid smiled too, but her smile looked forced, like she was trying to hide something. That was the first strange thing. The second strange thing was how my daughter-in-law kept asking questions. What time will you leave? How long will you stay? Will you take all your documents with you? She asked these things again and again. Each time she smiled, but her eyes were sharp, watching, counting. That night, I went to my room to pack. As I folded my clothes, memories filled my mind. This house, the walls, the land, I built my life here. Every corner meant something to me. I felt proud, but also uneasy. A quiet fear sat in my chest, though I didn't know why. Then the door opened. It was the maid. She had worked in this house for many years. She was never loud, never rude, always careful with her words. But that night her face was pale and her hands were shaking. She closed the door behind her. Before I could speak, she stepped close and grabbed my shoulder tightly. Sir, she whispered, her voice breaking, please don't go. I froze. She looked around the room like someone might be listening. Her eyes were wet, full of fear. Just trust me, she said again. Please. My heart started beating fast. I asked her what she meant, but she shook her head quickly. I can't say more, she whispered. Not here, not now. Then, just as fast, she let go of me. She wiped her face, straightened her dress, and walked out of the room like nothing had happened. I stood there alone, staring at the door. My hands felt cold. The room felt smaller. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe she was afraid for no reason. But the way she looked at me, that was not a mistake. I slowly sat on the bed and looked at my packed bag. For the first time since hearing about the trip, I asked myself a hard question. What if Rome was not a gift, but a way to get me out of this house? That night, I did not sleep. And by morning, I had already decided I would pretend to leave. Morning came too quickly. I barely slept, but the house was already awake. Voices filled the hallway. Doors opened and closed. It felt like a normal travel day. Yet everything inside me felt wrong. My suitcase stood by the door, fully packed. I touched the handle and felt how heavy it was. Not just with clothes, but with fear. My daughter-in-law walked in, smiling wide. "Today is the day," she said cheerfully. "You must be excited." I nodded and forced a small smile. I did not trust my voice. She helped adjust my jacket and kept looking at her phone, again and again, like she was waiting for something or someone. My son came in next. He hugged me, but it felt quick, rushed. He did not look me in the eyes. That hurt more than I expected. Outside, the car waited. The driver placed my suitcase in the trunk. Neighbors waved as if this was a happy moment. I waved back, acting calm, acting normal. My daughter-in-law hugged me tightly, too tightly. "Have a safe trip," she said softly. I got into the car. As we drove away, I looked back at the house through the window. A strange thought hit me. What if this was the last time I ever saw it? My chest tightened. After a few minutes, I leaned forward and spoke to the driver. "Please stop at the next street," I said. I forgot something important. The driver looked surprised but obeyed. When the car stopped, I got out with my suitcase and walked slowly toward a nearby house. A neighbor I had known for years lived there. Someone I trusted. The car drove away. From that moment, I was officially gone. Inside the neighbor's house, I sat near the window and watched my own home from a distance. My hands shook as I placed my bag on the floor. Time passed slowly. Every sound felt loud. Every shadow made my heart jump. I kept thinking about the maid's words. "Please don't go. Just trust me." An hour later, the street became quiet. Then I saw it. A black van turned the corner and stopped directly in front of my house. No logos, no plates I could read. Dark windows. Two men stepped out. Big, serious. They did not smile. They did not look around like visitors. My breath caught in my throat. The front door of my house opened. And when I saw who walked out to meet them, my knees went weak. It was my daughter-in-law. From the neighbor's window, I watched everything. My daughter-in-law stood near the black van like she was expecting it. She did not look surprised. She did not look afraid. She spoke to the two men calmly, pointing toward the house, then toward my room upstairs. My heart sank. One of the men opened the back of the van and pulled out a thick folder. She took it and flipped through the pages, nodding as if she understood every word written there. This was not random. This was planned. A few moments later, the front door opened again. The maid stepped outside. She looked small next to the men. Her hands were clenched tight at her sides. One of the men said something harsh to her. I could not hear the words, but I saw her shake her head again and again. She looked scared. Then, my daughter-in-law raised her hand and spoke sharply. The maid fell silent and stepped back into the house. That was when everything became clear. The trip to Rome was never for me to enjoy. It was a lie, a clean way to send me far away. While I was gone, papers could be signed, decisions could be made, things taken from me. My mind raced. The house, the land, everything was still in my name. If I left the country, it would be easy for someone to say, I agreed to something I never saw. Easy to change locks. Easy to change stories. I felt sick. I remembered the maid cleaning late at night, hearing whispers, seeing documents on the table. She must have known this was coming. She tried to stop me the only way she could, by grabbing my shoulder, by begging me to trust her. The men moved toward the front door. They were going inside my home. I could not stay hidden anymore. If I did nothing, I would lose everything, or worse. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. The neighbor looked at me with worry, but I did not stop. I opened the door and stepped outside. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was clear. Whatever was waiting for me inside that house, I would face it myself. I walked toward my house with slow, steady steps, even though my heart was pounding like a drum. Every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself was trying to pull me back. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven, but I kept going. This was my home. I would not hide while strangers walked through it. The first man noticed me. He turned, his eyes narrowing, clearly confused. The second man followed his gaze. Their faces changed when they realized who I was. Shock flashed across them, quick and sharp. My daughter-in-law froze. For a second, no one spoke. The street felt silent, like the world was holding its breath. "You're supposed to be on a plane," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but I heard panic under it. I stopped a few steps away from them. "I changed my mind," I replied. My voice surprised even me. It was steady, strong. The men looked at each other. One of them took a step closer to me. He was tall, with hard eyes that looked like they had seen too much. "This is private business," he said. "You should leave." I smiled sadly. "This is my house. There's no business here without me." My daughter-in-law's face tightened. "You're tired," she said quickly. "You don't understand what's happening." "Oh, I understand," I said. "More than you think." The front door opened behind them. The maid stood there. Her eyes met mine and they filled with tears. She shook her head slightly as if saying she was sorry I had to see all this. That small movement hurt me more than any word. One of the men turned toward her and snapped, "Go inside." She did not move. That was when something inside me changed. Fear turned into anger. Not loud anger, but a deep, burning kind. The kind that comes when you realize someone you trusted was ready to destroy you. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "I've already made a call," I said calmly. "The police know there are strangers trying to enter my property." That was a lie. But it worked. The men stiffened. One of them stepped back slightly. They were strong, but they were not brave. People who work in shadows never like light. My daughter-in-law stared at me. Her mouth opened, then closed. The smile she always wore was gone now. In its place was frustration. "You're making this difficult," she hissed. "No," I replied. "You did." I turned to the maid. "You tried to warn me," I said gently. "Thank you." She covered her mouth and began to cry. The neighbor stood at the gate now, watching everything. Other doors along the street cracked open. Curtains moved. Eyes were on us. The men noticed. One of them whispered something to the other. They both looked at my daughter-in-law, waiting. She clenched her fists. For a moment, I thought she would shout. Instead, she took a deep breath and forced her face to calm. "This isn't over," she said quietly. I met her eyes. "It is for today." The men turned and walked back to the black van. The doors slammed shut, loud and final. The engine roared, and within seconds, the van drove away, disappearing down the street. Silence returned. I stood there, my legs suddenly weak. The danger was gone, but the pain remained. Pain has a way of staying even after fear leaves. My daughter-in-law did not look at me again. She walked back into the house without a word. I watched her go, feeling like I had just lost someone who was never really mine. Inside the house, everything looked the same. The walls, the floor, the pictures on the shelf, but nothing felt the same. The maid stood near the door, wiping her tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know how else to help." "You did the right thing," I told her. "You were brave." I sat down slowly, the weight of the moment finally settling on me. I had stopped something terrible. But I knew one truth now, clear and sharp in my mind. The real battle had never been about Rome, it was about control, and it wasn't over yet. That night the house was quiet, but my mind was loud. I sat alone in the living room, the lights dim, listening to the ticking of the old wall clock. Every tick felt like a reminder that time had almost been taken from me. Not just my time, but my life, my home, my voice. I thought about Rome, how close I'd been to walking into that car, waving goodbye, trusting a smile that hid a plan. If I had not listened to the maid, I would have been far away while strangers touched my things, signed papers in my name, and decided my future without me. The thought made my hands shake. The maid brought me a cup of tea. She placed it on the table carefully, like the cup might break if she wasn't gentle. "I didn't sleep," she said softly. "Neither did I replied. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I stood up and did something I'd been avoiding. I called my son. He answered after a few rings. His voice sounded tired, guilty. "Why?" I asked him. "Just one word." There was a long pause. "I didn't know it would go that far," he finally said. "That hurt more than shouting would have." "You knew enough," I said. "Enough to stay quiet." He tried to explain. He said money was tight. He said pressure was high. He said mistakes were made. I listened, but my heart felt heavy. "This house," I said calmly, "was built with my hands. It will not be taken with lies." When the call ended, I felt something strange. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity. Clear like morning air after a storm. The next day I acted. I visited a lawyer. I reviewed every paper, every document, every right that was mine. I made changes, strong changes, safe changes. I made sure no one could move me again without my voice being heard. I also made another decision. I called the maid into the room. She stood nervously, her hands folded, afraid she had done something wrong. "You saved me," I said. "You chose truth when silence would have been easier." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't have much," I continued, "but I know loyalty when I see it." I promised her protection, stability, respect, not as a servant, but as family. She cried openly then, covering her face. I placed a hand on her shoulder, the same shoulder she had grabbed to save me. The days that followed were not easy. My daughter-in-law avoided me. The house felt divided, heavy. But lies cannot survive in light for long. The truth has weight, and eventually it presses down on everyone who tried to escape it. One evening, I stood alone in the garden, watching the sun go down. The same garden I almost lost. I realized something important. The danger had not come with loud threats or raised voices. It came wrapped as kindness, as a gift, as a smile. That lesson stayed with me. Rome never happened, but I gained something far greater. I gained my life back. I gained my home back. And most of all, I gained the wisdom to know that trust must be earned, not offered blindly, even to those who sit at your table. As the sun disappeared, I whispered a quiet thank you. Not to fate, not to luck, but to the courage it took to listen when someone said, "Please don't go." Sometimes the smallest voice saves you from the biggest danger. And sometimes staying home is what truly saves your life. When everything was finally quiet, I sat alone in my house and listened to my own breathing. I was still here. The walls around me were the same. The floor felt familiar under my feet, but I was not the same man who had packed that suitcase. I kept thinking about how close I had been to leaving, how easy it would have been to trust a smile, how one flight ticket almost cost me my home, my safety, and my voice. The danger did not come from strangers on the street. It came from someone sitting at my table. That truth hurt more than anything else, but it also opened my eyes. I learned that gifts can hide traps, that silence can be a weapon, and that sometimes the bravest person in the room is the one with the least power. The maid did not have money. She did not have authority, but she had courage, and that courage saved my life. Rome never happened. Yet I gained something far more important than travel. I gained awareness. I gained control. And I gained the strength to protect what is mine. If there is one lesson my story leaves behind, it is this. When someone quietly says, "Please don't go," listen, because sometimes the warning you almost ignore is the one that saves you from everything you're about to lose. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.